Right, my friends. I just pressed the Let's Go Live button, so let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet. Before we go ahead and get started, got to make sure the tubes are working. Hopefully the Rumble is working today. We're going to do a double check on this one and see if this kicks off. We've got our friends on locals are fired up. Hopefully Rumble is working. We connected the tubes on our back end. Hey, it's working. All right, Rumble's up. Good to know. We got Telegrams up. Of course, we got our friends over on YouTube up. That's tremendous. That means we can go ahead and get started. So let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live, the show that spotlights misconduct involving police, prosecutors, and politicians. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney, and today we're talking about Trump being back on the ballot in Colorado. We're going to go through this. There is a lot of back and forth in this state. They really do not want him on the ballot there, but what happened was the Colorado GOP submitted a petition, and the Colorado GOP petition, as we know, pursuant to the original Supreme Court order from Colorado, they said as soon as something hit the docket at the Supreme Court level, everything gets stayed in Colorado. And so we're going to hear from Jena Griswold. She's the Secretary of State over there. But she's basically saying, look, Trump is going to be back on the ballot, not by virtue of a merits finding, not because the Supreme Court has said that what they did was insane, just simply because of the fact that this petition has been filed. And so we'll read through this one. This one came over from Jay Sekulow. You may know him, somebody who's worked with and for Trump before, and so they brought him in Colorado, and we'll see what happened there. CNN had some analysis on this, so we'll listen to them. And Donald Trump called in and had some comments about the January 6th committee and whether they deleted evidence. Of course, we know that they did. So we'll talk about all of that in the first segment, and it is good news. Trump is back on the ballot in Colorado for the time being. Of course, Supreme Court could always say something and things could change up. We've also got in Florida, another update with Judge Cannon, because Judge Cannon is presiding over the classified documents case. And we know there's a lot of back and forth on this one. The J6 case is currently on appeal. But in Florida, they're still debating about trial dates. And we've got a March date coming up soon for a status conference. And so we're going to hear from Trump's defense because they submitted a motion. They want access to the CIPA filings. Remember, CIPA, the Classified Information Procedures Act, this is the classified documents case. And so you'd think we'd have some opportunity to talk about the classified documents. But Jack Smith is submitting a bunch of other alternative motions to the judge, bypassing Donald Trump's defense. And so they're fighting to get access to that. Hey, hello, judge, can we see what they're filing, please? Like, how are they talking to you without copying us? They're saying it's classified documents. And so we'll see what Trump's attorneys say. We've also got Alina, Habba, who's on the show today, and she's going to be saying, you know, Jack Smith is a moron, a deranged thug, my words, not hers, but really that he has no case. And so we'll listen to see what she has to say in a bit. Then in our final segment, we're going to turn our attention to Maine. We've already seen some filings in Maine. They have a little bit of a different situation there. This all basically just goes up to the Secretary of State. That woman's name is Shenna, I think. Shenna, Shenna. Last name is Bellows. And Donald Trump, in his defense, they're saying that she needs to recuse herself from this case entirely because of some prior tweets of hers. That she is biased and partisan and political, and that she should not be reviewing any of these decisions that are coming before her. So we'll see what that filing looks like. The letter went over to her office saying, hey, Shenna, it's about time you recuse yourself. Then we'll turn our attention over to this loser, Peter Strozk, who blocked me on the X platform because he's a coward and a whiner. But he is a disgraced ex-FBI agent as well. And he had a clip that we'll listen to and make fun of. His name is Peter Strozk. And so we'll listen to him. And then we've got Dingell, also known as Representative Dingell, who is responding to Donald Trump's comment called when he was saying that they should all rot in hell. And we knew that this was going to come back over at some point. So here they are talking about it in Congress. Oh, you know, no, I don't want to go to hell. I want to go to heaven. Well, Too bad. Stop being a bad person. All right, so we got 3 segments today, and we're excited to get to all of them. This morning, we had a great members-only stream where we dove into a couple other stories. Nikki Haley has a difficult time understanding war, including Ukraine war, Iraq war, Civil War. Doesn't really matter. She botched the Civil War question that got asked to her. And we did a little bit of a members-only segment review on that one. We also talked about New York. New York is banning Texas buses, which to me feels very racist and anti-migrant, kind of xenophobic, don't they want, it's a sanctuary city. Why don't they just wave these people in by the busload, literally? But no, they're going to be banning Texas buses unless they notify them and all sorts of other, red tape and hoops they have to jump through. And so we talked about that on our membos only stream this morning. And of course, we'd love it if you became a membo at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We do members only streams in the morning. We do Saturday shows. We're working on a super cool project that I'm about to share with you soon, probably tomorrow. And it is a lot of fun. So come check it out, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And today, before we get into the show, the meat and potatoes, man, I got a new sponsor here I'm very excited about, and I hope you're very excited about it too. It's Vanish, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them right here, and hopefully you can use this. I know many of you can. So let's check out our today's sponsor before we get into it, our friends at Vanish. Just when I thought my gear couldn't get any better, I discovered Vanish holsters. This isn't just any holster, it's the most comfortable one I've ever strapped on. The Vanish holster fits 99% of modern handguns and holds 2 extra mag pouches, and whether you're right-handed or left-handed, it's got you covered. It's made from a durable Cordura and polyester blend, meaning it's very lightweight at just 6 ounces. But don't let that fool you. It's tough, adjustable, it's got a no-stink material, meaning you'll stay fresh all day. It fits up to a size 68-inch waist, and the best part is it's so discreet no one will know you're carrying a Vanish. And now you can be a part of the biggest giveaway we've ever had on this channel. One of you, my friends, can win this $1,000 worth of gold thanks to Vanish. To enter, all you have to do is click the link in the description and get yourself the most comfortable holster you've ever worn with a money-back guarantee. And Vanish is not done there. Get $40 off now when you use my link below, plus 120,000 bonus entries with each purchase up until December 31st. So get your Vanish holster today by following the link below and stay strapped, my friends. All right, my friends. So that link is in the description. Head on over to Vanish and grab it. It is right there, the link at vanish.com/Robert Govea. So check it out. Super cool sponsor. I'm very excited about them. And hopefully you can use it. I think you can. Don't you want to have your things vanish when you don't want them to be seen? So check them out. Vanish.com/Robert Govea. Very excited about having them as a sponsor. We'll also invite you to go over to robertgovea.com so that you can check out our website there, get show reports, get the PDFs that we're about to go through. They'll all be linked up in there, and you can check that out at robertgovea.com. All right, now let's jump in to the meat and potatoes on the day. And let me just confirm one thing here to make sure that that is all nice and situated before we jump into the meat and potatoes. And there we go. Okay, so now let's get to it. Donald Trump is back on the ballot in Colorado. This happens after the Colorado GOP filed a petition in the Supreme Court. And as we know, the Colorado Supreme Court, when they issued their ruling, they said Trump is off the ballot except unless somebody files a petition. Well, guess what happened? Colorado GOP filed a petition, and now the case is going to be stayed. In other words, the removal is going to be stayed. And so the person who is going to be actually making this happen, her name is Jena Griswold, and she posted this today right after the petition was filed. She said, Donald Trump engaged in insurrection. This is the Colorado Secretary of State, and was disqualified under the Constitution from the Colorado ballot. Colorado Supreme Court got it right. This decision, though, is now being appealed, right? With that, and if we read the order here from Colorado, and once it was appealed, boom, Trump now stays on the ballot just by virtue of the Colorado ruling, nothing the Supreme Court did. So now Jena says, I urge the U.S. Supreme Court to act quickly given the upcoming presidential primary election. Right. So Jay Sekulow and the people who are challenging this have submitted their petition for a writ of certiorari. We are going to read that in a short second. But let's listen to what Jena Griswold said right after Colorado issued their ruling. This is some time ago, right after the ruling came out. But I just want to give you a flavor for who this person is and what she says when she's on MSNBC talking about what's happening there in her state.
Given your feelings about sort of the merits of the state Supreme Court's ruling tonight, I wonder if you could comment on what you will do if the Supreme Court decides to overturn it.
I agree with the Colorado Supreme Court's decision.
Of course you do.
I have said time and time again that I believe that Donald Trump incited the insurrection. And also, there shouldn't be some loophole in the U.S. Constitution allowing the president, but no one else, to engage in insurrection. And
there isn't, dummy. There is a process by which you go after somebody who does engage in criminality. Doesn't matter what it is. You impeach them like the Democrats did in the House of Representatives, and then you take it over to the Senate and convict them. But guess what? Nobody convicted Trump because there wasn't enough political willpower to overcome the politics and give it a resounding thumbs down saying this is not appropriate conduct. So had they done that, well, then you could say that he was actually impeached and he found of guilty of insurrection under the Congress, and then everybody else could have prosecuted him accordingly. But that didn't happen. But they know that, and they just keep talking this stuff. And if she doesn't know that, then what the heck is she doing as Secretary of State?
Then serve in office again. But with that said, I will follow the law in the United States Constitution because unlike Donald Trump, I believe that's what elected officials should be doing. And if
throwing their opponents off the ballot?
If a court decides that he is on the ballot, I, of course, will follow that.
Yeah.
I swore to uphold the Constitution. That is exactly what I will do.
So did Trump by speaking out against rigged elections from partisan hacks like you who are sitting in Secretary of State offices colluding to remove him off the ballot, right? This person and these people like her were around in 2020 and they're going to be around in 2024. And they were all colluding, in my opinion, with groups like the Democracy Docket and Mark Elias and those guys who were, through the Retired Association People of America, filing lawsuits against secretaries of state like Jocelyn Benson and others in Pennsylvania, Michigan, everywhere. And they were all buckling. The secretaries of state were the ones who were saying, oh, we can't be sued here. There's problems. And if we're sued, we might as well just go into settlement agreements with these other third parties and create deals. So Trump then says, how about I enforce the Constitution? We let the state legislatures, which are constitutionally embedded with the responsibility to govern our elections, how about we let them do it? Not secretaries of states and judges in all the various counties and states that made the changes to the elections right in the run up to 2020.
And I think Donald Trump, when he swore to uphold the Constitution, should ask himself whether he has been successful on his oath of office.
Yes, he has. He has. He's not the person who's trying to break 234 years of American precedent and throw their political opponents off the stage, just like they're doing in Putinsville, right? Or wherever else that they want to lambast us. How dare Putin throw Navalny in the gulags? By the way, I agree. That's not appropriate. We shouldn't be doing that. And we're doing that here. And this woman, look at her smiling, just thrilled with herself that she's on the team of get your political opponents off the board. So that's who we're dealing with. That is Jena Griswold over from Colorado. And now we're going to take a look at the petition for a writ of certiorari right after a quick message from our friends. And now let's take a look at the filing going directly to the Supreme Court of the United States. You see, the case is the Colorado Republican State Central Committee versus Norma Anderson. These are the petitioners to the Supreme Court of the United States of America. They say, we are now appealing what came out of that dumpster fire Supreme Court Colorado courtroom. People on this case, you know this name, Jay Sekulow and many others who are doing good work here. Counselors. Now, this is not Donald Trump's filing. This is the Colorado GOP. Now, we're happy about that there's some GOP entity somewhere doing something meaningful. And let's take a look at what they are saying now. So for zooming out purposes, remember, Colorado, we had the lower level court, Sarah B. Wallace, heard this fake show trial and decided, you know what, Donald Trump did commit an insurrection, but there's not enough evidence that the 14th Amendment applies to the office of the presidency. And then that went up on appeal, and the Supreme Court of Colorado reversed it. Said, nope, 14th Amendment does apply, and now Donald Trump is removed unless somebody files a petition like this one in the Supreme Court or until the Supreme Court tells us differently. So now, since Trump lost, he is appealing to the Supreme Court, but in this case, it's just really the Colorado GOP. Here's what the GOP asks. Here are the questions. They say the Supreme Court of Colorado held that states possess the authority, regardless of the lack of congressional authorization, to determine that a presidential candidate is disqualified under the 14th Amendment and that Trump is disqualified specifically. Okay, so two issues kind of wrapped in there. One, here are several questions. One, does the president fall within the list of officials who is subject to disqualification under the 14th? Okay, here is the scope of the 14th. Is Trump inside or out of it? Whether the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is self-executing. Okay, so can people in Colorado just decide, it's automatic. You can remove candidates from the ballot absent congressional action, right? So in other words, the states can just do it. You don't need an impeachment. You don't need a conviction in the Senate. You don't even need a criminal conviction. You don't need criminal charges. Can the states just do it? And three, whether the denial to a political party like the GOP of its ability to choose a candidate of its choice violates the First Amendment right of association. So the GOP cannot essentially use their First Amendment rights, their free speech, their free rights of association in these matters. So table of contents we'll fast forward through. We know the appendix is there. The table of authorities appropriate for a SCOTUS filing, we'll move beyond that one, along with the rules. And here we go. Now, they're going to give us the opinions. They say here are the court has jurisdiction, right? Colorado Supreme Court issued judgment. And so this court has jurisdiction under the U.S. Code. So Supreme Court, we're rightfully in front of you. We're appealing from the highest state court that's in the state, and the next stop is you. Here's what they tell us. Now, the First Amendment of the Constitution, as we know, says Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech, press, assembly, or the petition of your government for a redress of grievances. The 14th Amendment, we've read the insurrection clause about 100 times here. And now we'll get to the statement of the case. We know that there was a bunch of procedural stuff that got us into Colorado, and we just summarized that. We had an evidentiary hearing, and the court made a factual finding that Trump engaged in an insurrection. They say the Colorado Supreme Court then held that the lower level court was reversed, affirming the trial court's factual findings and legal conclusions, and the three justices dissented. Now, the state Supreme Court, when they said Trump is getting off the ballot, they did something very strange and kind of weakling-ish. They stayed their own order, right? They just said, we're going to just stay ourselves. They say, we stay our ruling until January 4th, the day before the deadline. But if review is sought in the Supreme Court before the stay expires, which it has, it shall remain in place, meaning the stay will extend beyond January 4th. And the secretary will continue to be required to include Trump's name on the ballot. Oh, great. So you wrote this big giant opinion and you're going to put his name on the ballot anyways? Pathetic. Now, the petition is what is being followed. They say, look, all right, all that has been discussed. Dear Supreme Court judges, for the first time in American history, a former president has been disqualified from a ballot. Nice. In addition to an indictment. We have a lot of firsts with Trump this year, don't we? Now, a political party has been denied the opportunity to put forward the candidate of their choice, and the voters have been denied 1.3 million plus of them of the ability to choose their president. Now, this unprecedented decision from Colorado urgently merits this court's review in SCOTUS. Why? Because there's a potential for chaos wrought by the imprudent, unconstitutional, and standardless system in which each state gets to adjudicate its 14th Amendment. And by excluding Trump from the ballot, the Colorado Supreme Court has engaged in an unprecedented disregard for the First Amendment right of the political parties and the people to choose the candidate of their choice. But rejecting a long history of precedent, a state's highest court, the Democrats, now concluded that individual litigants, state courts, state election officials in each of the 50 states plus DC, they all can do whatever the heck they want. They all possess the legal authority to enforce the 14th Amendment, saying with the number of challenges to President Trump's candidacy now pending in other states, we've got lawsuits, administrative proceedings. They say there's a real risk that the Colorado majority's flawed and unprecedented analysis will be borrowed, and the resulting grave legal error repeated. In fact, we know they're already trying this in Maine. They're using this concept called issue preclusion to say that in Maine, they don't even need to relitigate what happened in Colorado. All they need to do is just copy and paste their decision. They say, look, while 51 different solutions may be a great ideal for a federalist experimentation, it would be a recipe for national disaster if we tried it now. They say the Colorado decision is also wrong for a whole host of reasons. As most relevant here, first of all, they improperly established and violated the First Amendment rights. They failed to apply precedent that has repeatedly said that the 14th Amendment is not self-executing. That alone, just that issue alone, would be enough for review. They also incorrectly concluded that a president is, quote, an officer of the United States. That alone is grounds for review. Wrong and wrong again. But it really, Your Honors, at the Supreme Court, writes Colorado, but it is the radical effects of the Colorado Supreme Court decision that really necessitates this court's review as reasonably as possible. They say Colorado, the Supreme Court there, has decided to bar President Trump, by all accounts, the current leading candidate, from the primary ballot. And the historical significance of this decision cannot be overstated. The Colorado Supreme Court has removed the leading Republican candidate from the primary and general ballots, fundamentally changing the course of American democracy. Yeah, never happened before, as we've seen. Now, and its significance is not merely political, but it's also legal. Rejecting a long history of precedent, a state Supreme Court has now concluded that individual litigants, various state courts, all secretaries of states, and all 50 states now have the sole authority to enforce Section 3 of the 14th. Now, unless the Colorado Supreme Court decision is overturned, they say, any voter will have the power to sue to disqualify any political candidate in Colorado or any other jurisdiction. This will not only distort 2024, but also everything moving forward, and there will be more nebulous accusations of insurrection, like our borders being insurrected because Joe Biden and his people are allowing it to happen. Maybe Barack Obama committed an insurrection when he murdered American citizens via drone strikes. Maybe George Bush broke the law, committed insurrection when he lied to us to get us into a never-ending war, right? You get how stupid this can go? Trump said some words and there was a 4-hour riot. Those other presidents did a lot worse. Now, indeed, the catastrophic effects of the Colorado Supreme Court are already foreshadowed in recently decided cases involving others. We know we've got something in Alaska. We've got this case. Looks like this one's filed in the District Court of Arizona. Here, great, perfect. We've got this one. LexisNexis is saying this one's out of California. Here, this one is the Southern District of Florida. We've got Florida here. They're in Michigan on that case, Minnesota over here, and West Virginia in this case. A lot of other cases are percolating. We've talked about the domino effect. As soon as one sticks, the rest will fall. Now, other cases not involving Trump have also raised these issues before, but most courts have rejected these lawsuits on jurisdictional grounds. But the mental cases in Colorado have followed its own path and split from others, warranting this court's review. They say the district court rightly concluded, that was Judge Sarah B. Wallace, who we thought for sure was an ultra lefty who was going to just, use this as her heyday. But even she was like, okay, I can't do this. I got to wake up and look at myself. In ruling that President Trump must be given access to the Colorado ballot, she said any doubts about these interpretive questions should be resolved by the democratic process. If Trump is such an insurrectionist, isn't he going to be just totally blown out at the election? Like if Trump, illegally murdered somebody, right? For example, which is what murder is. Would there even be a question? There you go. That dude is like bad news. Okay. You don't have to debate those issues. Like when a crime is really bad, you don't have to debate it. Everybody just goes, okay, look, you really shouldn't have done that. Okay. Like that's clearly illegal. You're not a good person for doing that. You should be ashamed of yourself. So if that is the case, it should be as easy as day for all of us to see it. But I think they think Trump has some like Jedi mind power and he just froths everybody up into this misinformation delusion. But no, they don't want to do that at all. Just leave it to the people. We'll decide. They can't do that because they know they don't have anything. And it's not a crime like that. It is political partisan gamesmanship. Now, as the Attorney General Stanbury noted during the Civil War, he said, where from the generality of terms of description or for any other reason a reasonable doubt arises, that doubt should be resolved in operation of the law and in favor of the voter. That comes from the Reconstruction Acts, which, guess what, is when the 14th Amendment was drafted. So you resolve it in favor of the voter. You don't pervert the 14th Amendment to throw someone off the ballot. The same is true here. Should this court have any interpretive doubt, it should be resolved in doubt in favor of the democratic process. That's the safety valve. Let us vote. They note here in a footnote, the drastic effects of the Colorado Supreme Court decision necessitate an immediate review now during the current term. The prompt hearing of this case is necessary to stop Colorado from having an irreparable effect on the electoral process. They say Colorado GOP is prepared to abide by whatever expedited process this court might cite, and saying here, we're going to be also filing a motion to expedite this entire case. So they say the president is not an officer covered within the 14th Amendment. They say, all right, Supreme Court, you're much smarter than these people in Colorado, but let's just lay this out. The trial court reached the correct conclusion. The president is not covered by Section 3. The 14th Amendment only disqualifies those who serve specific roles. In fact, you can read it. Specifically, a person is disqualified only if he previously took an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or any executive or judicial officer of the state. That's what it says specifically. Now, because, okay, here's some neat legal analysis. Every time you see the word because, it's like, oh, okay, are we transitioning from the rule, which is what this is. This is the rule section. And then we're going to move into analysis section. Okay. And then what you're going to see here is really a standard IRAC format, right? This is IRAC. And we're going to see a conclusion down here. The Constitution makes very clear, not an officer. We get a nice conclusion there. So the rule, it's called IRAC. It's a good way to write. What's the issue? What's the rule? What's the analysis? What's the conclusion? Here's the because. Now, because President Trump, now this is like paint by numbers stuff. Now they're explaining this for the dummies down there in Colorado, but say was never a congressman. Therefore, it doesn't apply. He was never a state legislator. He was never an officer. So Section 3 applies to him only if he was an officer of the United States. But that term is used in Section 3 does not cover the president. Now, the Constitution also makes clear that he's not an officer of the United States. For example, the Commissions Clause states that the president shall commission all the officers of the United States, okay? The president shall commission all the officers of the United States. He's not going to commission himself. He's not a member of the Biden family. Now, if the president is an officer of the United States, then the president commissions himself, which is what Hunter does. Now, on the contrary, the presidency is not among the specific roles enumerated. It's not on the list of the others, nor is the president an officer of the United States. The people do not vote for the officers of the United States. They look to the president to guide those appointments. So it's undisputed that the presidency can be considered an office. It's not even a question. But the Section 3 does not disqualify all officers in a general sense. Instead, it disqualifies officers of the United States. This term of art is used only in 3 places in the Constitution. Section 3 of the 14th, the Commissions Clause, and the Appointments Clause, which provides that the president shall nominate and by and with advice and consent of the Senate shall appoint ambassadors and other public ministers and judges and all other officers. Now, accordingly, it is the president who appoints the officers of the United States and has the authority to commission those officers. He is not himself, therefore, an officer of the United States. Every time that term of art is used, it is explicitly not inclusive of the presidency. Colorado Supreme Court reasoned poorly that because the president is an officer in the general sense, he's close enough, he therefore is an officer of the United States. Now, that's not how constitutional interpretation works. Hello. The Constitution uses a distinct, specific term called officer of the United States. That means something. Generic references to the term officer, kinda. It starts with an O. It's got 2 F's in it. Derp. Does not overcome the more specific meaning evidenced by the constitutional language, nor does any historical source indicate that this term was not to be understood in the specific sense it is used in the Constitution's text. In fact, the historical evidence is clear. Less than a decade after the ratification of the 14th Amendment, Senator Newton Booth, he said in the congressional record, he said this: the president is not an officer of the United States. When they were debating the 14th Amendment, they were discussing how to define it. It goes down in the record. He says the president is not an officer, the guy who helped write the bill. We've also got Senator Boutwell. He explained, he said, according to the Constitution, as well as upon the judgment of eminent commentators, the president and vice president are not civil officers. And near the same time, another treatise written by David McKnight wrote this book in 1878, probably awesome. Well, I'd like, get a copy of that. How cool. The Electoral System of the United States, 1878. Near the same time he wrote in that treatise, he said, the president is not regarded as an officer of or under the United States. Okay. And that is by design, right? If the president is subordinate to something, who is he subordinate to? Who is it? The president is the root power of the executive branch. Okay. That's why it's such a powerful position. If he's subject, as we've made the point here, to NARA, to National Archives, okay, we always hear Congress. They say, well, Congress passed the classified documents rules and litigation. All crap. I don't care. The president has opinion clause power. He can get opinions from his people. It's in the Constitution. So if Congress can establish, without a constitutional amendment, by the way, right? If they just pass some statute or something, it doesn't usurp the Constitution. And that's what they're trying to say. If they put the president as subordinate to some other entity, then the executive branch is subordinate. It's not independent. And we have separation of powers here. Just like we wouldn't subordinate the Supreme Court to some entity under the executive branch or under the legislature. So and I know it freaks people out to think that, like, wait, he's like literally above the law. Yeah, literally. That's why he can pardon people. So it is, it's the logic, and it's just the way that it works. And so they were writing about this in 1878. Now, more importantly, Attorney General Stanbury, who was the Attorney General, so think of him like Bill Barr or Eric Holder or like our Merrick Garland today, defined the term in the 14th Amendment as military as well as civil officers of the United States who had taken a prescribed oath. And he declared, as the Attorney General, he said that the phrase officers of the United States includes without limitation any person who has at any time prior to the rebellion held any office, civil or military, under the United States and has taken an official oath to support the Constitution of the United States. So, wow. And look at that time limiter there. Okay. Prior to the rebellion. Prior to the rebellion. So Trump, I don't think, did anything prior to the Civil War. So you think about time limitations as well, right? Maybe this was just applicable to the Civil War era. that Nikki Haley struggles to, she should read this opinion. It says, a president does not take the official oath that Stanberry viewed as dispositive, and so therefore he's not subject to Article 3. There are 2 oaths of office in the Constitution, and it's not like they just copied and pasted because they were lazy, okay? They separated them out by design. Should we make him take the same oath? I'll change it up a little bit for other people. It's different because it's different logically. There are 2 oaths of office in the Constitution. Article 6, Section 3 says that senators and representatives and members of legislatures and all executive and judicial officers, both of the U.S. and the states, shall be bound by the oath or affirmation to support the Constitution. Thus, all executive officers take an oath to support the Constitution. But the president does not take such an oath. Article 2, Section 1 says that the president instead takes an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. Little bit different than to support it. Now, this distinct phrasing further indicates that the purpose is, for Article 6, Section 3, the president is clearly and explicitly, literally not an officer. The actual language of the 14th Amendment uses the words of Article 6, not Article 2. It mirrors the one that supports Trump. The Colorado Supreme Court discussed extensively the overlapping duty, but that similarity, okay, just because it's close, doesn't erase the linguistic differences between the two. The court below cited this court's statement. They actually went to you, Supreme Court, which is where we're at right now, and they took something that you said, and we're going to explain what they said you said and explain it back to you. They said that you guys said back in 1889, the Supreme Court, obviously not the same people, they said that they, in a case called Lake County versus Rollins, said the simplest and most obvious interpretation of the Constitution, if in itself sensible, is the most likely to be meant by the people in its adoption. Okay, so they took that phrase, which is basically a statutory interpretation phrase. How do you, every time you read a sentence, there's multiple different strategies that you can use to analyze that. Do you analyze it right now, like alone with no other context? Do you just look at it and read the text and that's it? Or do you include a bunch of other stuff? Like, do you say, well, who was in the room when they wrote that? And what did they write before that? What did they write after that? And what did that word mean back 25 years ago when they actually said that? You can really like limit yourself to the 4 corners of the page, or you can go way outside. So what the removal people say, well, if it's just, common sense. And they say, here, they're kind of mocking this. They say, okay, true enough. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Yeah, that makes sense. But here, the simplest and most obvious explanation is that it means what it says, obviously, disqualifying those who took an official oath to support the Constitution. They wrote it down. No amount of discussion or obfuscation can change the simple fact that President Trump did not take that oath. The Constitution is clear. So the Supreme Court of Colorado then opined, because they were trying to fix this thing, they said it would make no sense to put in place an insurrectionist bar for every other federal office, but not for the president or the vice president. Well, if they can be prohibited for insurrectionary behavior, why can't everyone else? Well, they say there's a key difference here. Every senator or representative represents a geographic area where sympathy for insurrection was, at the time post-Civil War, where it was a real and legitimate concern. Lower federal officers, meanwhile, are not elected, and thus they don't face national electoral scrutiny. Only the president and the vice president face nationwide electoral accountability. The whole country gets to say. And if a bunch of people think that they are not an insurrectionist, they are free to vote that way. That's what democracy means, okay? Democracy means that if the government decides that we've decided that this is what's best for the people can say, no, absolutely not. That's the whole point, is to change what they're doing. So if we decide that this person that the people in charge claim is an insurrectionist, if the people override that, we can veto their belief. That's democracy in action. It's the will of the people speaking through the vote. So, and if an electoral majority of voters determine that they want a certain individual as this person, regardless of anything that actually happened in the past, that is their national choice under the Constitution. That is our right. In short, the president and his role is different in a way that matters. It is, and it's such a good point. And I'm finally glad to see that is being articulated here. It is the people's veto. Okay, the whole government can come out and say, this person's bad. Rawr, Trump, Trump, Trump. And we can all say, get bent. We don't trust you or believe you at all. And we can override their so-called Justice Department, the injustice system that they have created. We can override all of these bureaucrats at the FBI and the DOJ have been there for decades trying to rig systems their way. That's the power of democracy. They don't want democracy. They hate that. So the opinion continues. Now, they say Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is also not self-executing, meaning all of these little dictator secretaries of states can't just do it on their own. They say that the decision below suffers from many flaws. Tell me about it. Referencing the Colorado CODIS. Now, but as Justice Samore observed in his dissent, he said, the majority's ruling that Section 3 is self-executing is the most concerning misstep, saying Congress and Congress alone can enforce Section 3. But Congress has not provided a private cause of action under Section 3, meaning that individuals can't just go ahead and sue to get their way. And the only current enforcement mechanism, even arguable, is 18 U.S. Code 2383, which is a criminal statute banning insurrection and providing a penalty of disqualification. But President Trump has not been indicted under Section 2383, let alone tried and convicted as would be required to trigger the application of Section 3. In fact, after nearly 3 years of investigation, first by the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, and then all of that got bundled up and given over to Jack Smith, who is an illegal counsel, who is not even duly appointed. He just gobbled all that up. He was specifically tasked with prosecuting Trump, literally. President Trump, although indicted on several charges, has not even been accused, not even so much of as an insurrection with. Indeed, they say, adding insult to injury, the only time President Trump actually faced a formal allegation of insurrection brought by Democrats under Nancy Pelosi was in the context of impeachment proceedings, which were appropriate to political questions like this. And he was acquitted after a trial in the Senate. But they didn't like that. And so they just filed a lawsuit. Is there anything else we can do? Let's just file a lawsuit here. We'll get some Democratic judges, so-called, to deny him from being on the ballot. That's how we'll beat him. Now, I want to pause on this for a minute. You know, this does concern me at some point. I don't know if they're going to be able to get this in between now and the election, but I have my thinking is if they are not going to let Trump become the president, which I think they are doing everything they can, including wrecking our justice system. I mean, we've never seen anything like this. And it's literal Civil War statutes, okay, that they are digging back up during an election in America. It's analogous to a Civil War type of thing they are alleging happened. And they've made the same claims. The worst attack on democracy since the Civil War, right? All of this. So we've heard these languages. Now, what happens, and a couple things can happen that I think would deviate the path. One, they actually indict him with seditious conspiracy or insurrection under 2383 like we see here. And that is the pretext to say, well, he's been charged. And then other states will use that as one more ebb to say he should be removed. Or that causes the party, the Republican Party, to do something. The charge of insurrection says we're not going to defend him anymore. Or if they try to, fast track the insurrection charge, I don't think there's enough time to get a conviction before the election, but let's say they were able to do it. Or it comes back down from the Court of Appeals back in the Chutkan's courtroom, and there's a superseding indictment there, and she slaps it in there. Something happens, but he does get convicted. They make him the nominee. They say, you all voted. Okay, we heard you. Shut up. And now he's been convicted of an insurrection, or he's been convicted of anything. And so the, Ronna McRomneys, they come out and they say, well, we can't do this. He's going to, blah, blah, whatever, fake garbage. And they boot him off the ballot at that moment. And they slot in Nikki Haley, which they're all, gaga over because she loves endless war. So I'm thinking of, what are the contingency plans here? What are they holding in their back pocket? They're holding something in their back pocket. It's probably that, but they're running out of time, right? This is the other problem, is they're really running out of time. And Jack Smith kind of got delayed. Now that's why he's scrambling in the Supreme Court on the other cases. But point is, this is outstanding stuff. They say a lawsuit, cannot provide an end run around the mechanisms that Congress has already established. They say the Supreme Court here has repeatedly held that the 14th Amendment does not create a self-executing cause of action. For example, Section 5 explicitly says the power is on Congress to determine whether to enforce this. And that the 14th can be enlarged if authorized by Congress with appropriate legislation. But they didn't do that here. Colorado Supreme Court misunderstood this point. In support of its assertion that this is self-executing, it cited these civil rights cases. But those address whether the 14th Amendment provides a self-executing defense. You missed it, which it does. It is a defense. In some circumstances, the 14th Amendment is self-executed as a shield, providing a constitutional defense even if it's not explicitly provided for by law. It's a floor. It's a shield, not a sword. But in no circumstance is the 14th Amendment a self-executing sword. As the court thoroughly explained in that case, they said, yeah, it's true that the civil rights case references self-executing 14th Amendments when discussing the 15th Amendment. But here it should be provided as a doctrine of a shield under the doctrine of judicial review, saying the court observed it as a defense and not something that you can go attack people with. There's another case called Griffin's case, which makes the same point. In that case, they found the same thing. So the provisions, they say, are not self-executing as they claim. They say no one. Well, here, let's continue. They say, as Justice Samore also discussed, implementing legislation is also critical for due process reasons. If we don't have litigation, we don't know what the standards are. Okay, you can't just say, they just basically said that. Trump said the word fight like every Democrat has, and suddenly he's guilty. Justice Samore said, to ascertain what particular individuals are embraced, who is covered by Section 3, he says, in my view, the unwieldy experience of the instant litigation proves beyond any doubt that Section 3 disqualification necessarily requires substantial procedural and normative mechanisms to ensure a constitutionally compliant outcome. He also talked about self-execution. They're saying there is no authority to permit state legislatures to do that, which Congress has declined to do. Now, as this court has previously explained, they say, although the states generally retain broad authority, it does not extend to setting new qualifications for federal office. Now, the court came to some conclusions. They say if you give Section 3 power to the states, then the states can just veto any presidential candidates that they want, and it's going to turn the entire amendment upside down. They tell us in Section 3 of the filing that the Colorado Supreme Court also violated the Colorado's right to choose their candidate. Colorado Supreme Court removed the authority, and as other courts have noted, this is a problem. They say this is a First Amendment violation. On its face, the election code recognizes that political parties exist to erect guardrails for the process, but this disaster is now presenting a constitutional crisis that is national in scope. The Republican Party urges the court to vindicate this. Otherwise, they're just going to slam the Republican Party in the states. The election code says what it says for a reason. State political parties have well-established First Amendment rights. They get to freely associate with the people that they want to associate with. Why? Because political speech is indispensable to a free society. That's why we have the First Amendment. And so political speech is the broadest and most important of our First Amendment protections. And that was the same speech that the Biden people and the Democrats at the FBI and the DNC and all the anti-Trumpers, is probably the more accurate word, used to censor us and to demonetize us and to slam and censor our videos one after the other. And you as well, if you even liked Donald Trump's post, you showed up on a list somewhere because our association rights were being trampled upon. You can't associate with these people. They have to be thrown off the platforms. Okay. Now, political speech includes discussion of candidates, structures, forms of government. We are allowed to talk about those things. This is America. A party's selection of a candidate is literal political speech, and the court has recognized this. And so what the Colorado Supreme Court did is they paid lip service to that principle. They said, yeah. But after recognizing that this is a true principle, they failed to apply it. They just said, nope, Trump's an insurrectionist and he needs to be thrown off the ballot. And so the rest of this, you can see, they're saying the Republican Party has been irreparably harmed by the lower decision. The state has interfered with the primary election by unreasonably restricting the party's ability to select its own candidates. And as a natural and inevitable result, the state has interfered with the party's ability to choose their candidate, and they've done so based on a subjective, insane claim of insurrection that the state itself lacks any constitutional authority to make. And so they say to the Supreme Court, this court should grant certiorari, respectfully submitted by Jay Sekulow and many others. Shout out to everybody who's on this list filing an excellent motion, which, I mean, these legal issues to me don't even seem complicated. It's like it's cut and dry. What they are doing is not only politically insane and, anti-American, it is legally so far out of the operation of what you'd expect from a normal functioning society that it's wild we're even this far. I mean, honestly, even the district court judge, Sarah Wallace, got it. Like, I'm not going to do that. So this is now knocking on the door of the Supreme Court of the United States. The question will be, are they going to accept the case? And what's going to happen in terms of timelines? Because we know that the ballot deadline is coming up on January 5th, when they're going to have to decide whether to print him or not. My guess is Supreme Court accepts it. And the only other question is, how quickly do they accept it? Do we hear about this before the deadline expires? I'm not sure. So we'll see. We'll see if there's a response that is going to be flying in from the crew people in Colorado. And of course, we'll be here covering that one as well. But let's take a look at what some people on CNN are saying about this. They got news of the Colorado filing, and they are explaining how this all works over there on that platform. Let's chime in to see what they're saying.
Out front now, Karen Friedman-Agniflo, former chief assistant district attorney in the Manhattan DA's office. She also worked with Jack Smith, and Anthony Michael Christ, law professor at Georgia State University. Good to have both of you with us tonight. So, Anthony, when we look at what happened in Michigan, the state Supreme Court there keeping Trump on the primary ballot for 2024. We just saw, right, this appeal from the GOP in Colorado. Paul is new reporting here, this breaking news. What do you think all of this means for both Colorado and Michigan as this moves potentially to the Supreme Court?
Well, it's really hard to make a lot out of the Michigan case, particularly because, as the previous guest noted, this is really basically a question about the vehicle in which state law provides to challenge the eligibility of a candidate. And the Michigan Supreme Court essentially ratified a ruling that said the Secretary of State doesn't have the discretion to challenge the eligibility or to look into the eligibility of a candidate at this particular stage. So it's really not really a loss or win for anybody. It's just kind of a status quo, very similar to the Minnesota case. But in all, I think it's untenable to have a scenario where you have this patchwork of eligibility determinations, and so ultimately the Supreme Court will, I think, have to take this up.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that.
And I just want to point out again, the Secretary of State in Michigan, a Democrat, who said she agreed essentially with the.
Yeah, so there is I think, going to be a split, and the Supreme Court is going to have to settle it, because we know in other states, Trump's on the primary. In Colorado, he's not. Kind of. He is not, unless a petition's filed, and so he will be on it. But the technical finding is that he is removed under the 14th Amendment. That's Colorado. In other cases, you'll imagine when the general comes, they're going to pick that up and say that is justification for keeping him off our ballot as well. And so that was what CNN was saying. I actually agree with that guy. I think the Supreme Court is going to have to take it. But we also have Donald Trump reacting to a lot of this lawfare. He was on with our friends at Just the News, John Solomon over there. They do amazing work. And Trump called in and he said, you know, a lot of the evidence that was used in Colorado to remove him was provided by the January 6th Select Committee, this illegally constituted committee. And what happened is they got rid of a lot of that evidence. We know that they gave it over to the White House before they turned it back over to the Republicans who were incoming and taking over Congress. And so Trump is pointing that out. You know, a lot of this evidence is just not even existent. It's all been deleted. It's all been evaporated by the Democrats. Go figure.
I want to get to another big development today. Jack Smith says he doesn't want you to be able to introduce evidence in your defense that maybe the January 6th attack was preventable, that police and others had engaged in some security failures, intelligence failures beforehand. Your reaction real quickly to the prosecutor's request today.
No, can you believe this? He's tried to defend Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of D.C., but he's tried to defend Nancy Pelosi, who did not do the job. We offered them, as you know, 10,000 troops or National Guard, whatever they wanted, before the event, because I knew it was going to be a very big event. And it wasn't my event. I went and showed up and made a speech. Right. We offered 10,000 people and more if necessary. And if they used 500 people, if they used 200 people, January 6th wouldn't have been January 6th. So can you imagine? This guy says, we don't want to introduce that. Well, that's a very big part of it. She was responsible for January 6th because she didn't take the security that we offered her. We offered her 10,000 troops. And, you know, you had far fewer people than that. It was a very small group of people relatively compared to the people listening to the speech, which was, by the way, the largest number of people that I've ever spoken before. Nobody ever talks about that, John. They talk about the group that went down and peacefully and patriotically, as I said, as you know. They don't mention that either. You know, that wasn't even brought up in the unselect committee. They didn't even use those words. They didn't say that I said the words peacefully and patriotically. This is a very dishonest group of people. And the deranged prosecutor, Jack Smith, he's a deranged human being, unattractive both inside and out. And you look at this guy, he doesn't want me to say that they turned down, and they turned it down in writing, by the way. And what happened is, as you know, the unselect committee deleted and threw out everything. They threw everything out, which would be illegal. If you ever did that in a court, a regular court, as a civilian, could you imagine somebody on the right, a Republican or somebody doing it? As you know, they deleted and threw out everything having to do with the hearings. Because a lot of bad things were said about Nancy Pelosi, a lot of bad things were said about a lot of people that they didn't want to get out to the public. So they threw out everything. They deleted everything. There is no information. There's nothing left. Well, it's like crazy. And the reason he doesn't...
And they're making that the pretext, like the J6 committee report, which didn't have any real due process. There was no adverse proceedings. There was no cross-examination of witnesses. It was just like a big book report. The Republicans really didn't even present any witnesses of their own that were antithetical to what the narrative was from Liz Cheney and Kinzinger. But Trump continues.
Doesn't want to do that is because they illegally destroyed everything. They destroyed all evidence. So he wants to do this because of the fact that they destroyed all evidence. They don't have the evidence anymore. And a lot of that evidence was pinpointing that Nancy Pelosi didn't take the troops. Days in advance, I said it. And I said it loud and clear. And they know I said it because I believe it was the mayor wrote a letter back that she doesn't want the troops.
Yeah, no, it's in writing.
But can you imagine a man saying, we're not allowed to bring the fact up that I offered 10,000 troops for January 6th.
Yeah.
You know, look, he's got a bad record. He's lost a lot of cases. And he loses them because he goes too far. He's a sick puppy.
He is a sick puppy. He's a deranged thug over there. And Trump hit that one exactly right on the head. And that's what Jack Smith, he doesn't want him to be able to talk about any agency failures or any preparatory behavior from Donald Trump. We read through the full filing yesterday. But what happened was he's explaining, right? They're using the January 6th Unselect Committee's report to boot him off the ballot. That was most of the case in the Colorado lower level court so-called trial. They just submitted the document. She's like, I love that report. Liz is my favorite. And then they brought Stinky Eric Swalwell, who made Bang Bang with Fang Fang, to come in and talk about it. That's it. And the report is illegitimate, okay? And it was all, deleted before the Republicans came in. So that is what's happening there in Colorado and elsewhere, really at the Supreme Court. And so we're going to see a bunch more filings on this one. We're going to see a bunch of stuff come in from the Colorado people, from amicus curiae, from all over the country, all going to come skidding in here. But for the time being, Trump is on the primary ballot in Colorado, pending any changes before the 4th and the 5th in January, where the deadlines are. And we'll be here continuing to cover. It's just going to be a domino effect. We're going to be playing whack-a-mole all across the states to try to keep Trump on the ballot so that the people in America can exercise their small part in our democracy, our democratic republic, by voting for the candidate of their choice, in spite of the Democrats and their efforts to keep the choice off the ballot. We'll be covering, my friends. Thank you for subscribing wherever you're watching this. Thanks for checking out our website, robertgovea.com. We've got a great website there. All of the PDFs are uploaded there. We have a daily newsletter that goes out. So if you want to grab these segments in your inbox and get a summary of the show, you can do that. We also have a shop, robertgovea.com/shop. Grab some hats, grab some shirts. It's a great way to support our work and look amazing out there. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends. Now, we're going to turn our attention over to Florida and talk about what's happening in Judge Cannon's courtroom. Donald Trump's defense demands access to some secret Jack Smith filings. He's sending a bunch of stuff ex parte over to Judge Cannon in the Florida classified documents case. And we've been following this one along very closely. Jack Smith is saying it's classified. So, Judge, we can't talk to the defense about it. And we just have to submit these filings to you without telling the other side. Now, normally in a criminal case or in any legal cases, you copy the opposing party. You send one into the court, you send a copy to the other side. Jack Smith has not been doing that in Florida. He wants to use CIPA to operate extrajudicially, right? To prosecute this case without showing the defense the evidence, which is par for the course for these maniacs. Now, we're going to hear from Alina, who hits this one on the head, says Jack Smith has no case because he's a deranged thug, my words. But let's take a look at the actual filing that landed in Judge Cannon's courtroom. The motion from Donald Trump is in reply in further support of the motion for access to the secret CIPA filings, the classified information filings that Jack Smith is sending over to the judge. You see, it's Judge Cannon's courtroom, West Palm Beach, Florida. United States of America versus Trump and his co-defendants Walt Nauta and Carlos de Oliveira. Trump's team writes, all right, Judge Cannon, we are submitting this reply in further support for access to the CIPA filings submitted by Jack Smith. Writing any classification of CIPA and motion papers arises from information that was originally classified pursuant to Trump's authority as CNC, Commander-in-Chief. So, in other words, Trump was the person who classified these things. So can we see them? This information was available to Trump while he led this nation. And under those circumstances, since he has literally seen this stuff, it is extraordinary, it's unprecedented, and it's improper for Jack Smith's office to try to withhold such information from the defense as the office seeks to use this prosecution to target the leading candidate of 2024. And they say, look, this is a big problem in and of itself. Okay, in other words, all these documents, they were in Trump's possession. He knows what they are. You don't need to continue to classify this stuff, or you can continue to classify it, but not withhold it from the defense. We already have seen it. So they say, but we're not even talking about that right now. We're asking about a much narrower issue. In light of the court's protective orders from Judge Cannon, They say the volume of similarly sensitive classified discovery and Trump's team's track record of compliance, there is no merit to Jack Smith's contention that Trump's cleared counsel should not be granted attorney's eyes only to the CIPA materials so that the court has the benefit of adversarial proceedings while evaluating these complex issues. So, Trump's defense is saying, we would like to be a part of the case too. We've done a good job in this case, so just let us see it. But they say Jack Smith does not address its prior misrepresentations and its misleading arguments. And now Jack Smith is only trying to present new ones. He's saying that this evidence is only need to know. And he's making vague arguments to support that. So Trump's team says, look, once Jack Smith and his arguments are stripped of those meritless contentions, it is clear that Jack Smith's opposition is not justified for any reason. For example, we have the thing in this country used to called the presumption of innocence. And so the prosecution is wrong to suggest that the filing of criminal charges is the basis of withholding the documents from the defense. Trump has arguments that they are his, in my opinion, under the opinion clause. Now, any ex parte claim, and an ex parte claim is secret messages with the judge that the defense doesn't know about. Any ex parte claim to that effect is based on allegations in the indictment, cannot withstand scrutiny. Why? The defense lawyers haven't been charged with crimes. Hello. And they have not mishandled any of the classified discovery at all. And so the defense attorneys just want to do their job. Now, the special counsel's office has also made important concessions here, which reveal that their broader position is based on inappropriate preference for one-sided proceedings that are hidden from the public in order to serve political motivations and intelligence community bias. Jack, for example, has conceded that, quote, some paragraphs in his CIPA section are marked as unclassified, but offers no justification why he's withholding those. So why is he not unredacting some parts? The office would not object to the public filing of a redacted version, but the claimed non-objection illustrates the office's misapprehension of its ongoing burden to demonstrate the need for sealing and in-camera review. In other words, Jack Smith doesn't want to do the actual hard work. He just wants ex parte, so he can just talk to the judge, rather than having to debate the need for sealing and whether Judge Cannon can conduct a courtroom in-chambers review. The office, Jack, also acknowledges, they say, that it will produce classified materials to Trump closer to trial. But they don't tell us why not now. Say, look, Your Honor, these positions they help demonstrate why Jack wants continued ex parte proceedings, but why he should not be granted them. Accordingly, the court should grant Trump's motion, saying, first of all, Jack Smith even concedes that some paragraphs are appropriate for us to see. CIPA does not apply to unclassified info, so there's no basis for Jack withholding this material. But in a misguided effort to maintain secrecy over the unclassified portions of the motion, Jack results to the same type of argument that we've seen before. He's saying the office presented frivolous claims about motions that were too sensitive to be disclosed to the lawyers. Now, the office says, well, some paragraphs are unclassified, but that there is still a risk of revealing classified information. So if you know the unclassified stuff, you're going to be able to fill in the gaps and just identify what is in the non-redacted portions. But they say, look, this argument's meritless, okay? Jack Smith cannot avoid disclosure of an entire filing because some unclassified paragraphs would, quote, risk revealing info. The office doesn't even make any effort to identify what paragraphs they're talking about. And they say, like the earlier motion, this is just another example from Jack of casual arguments made by prosecutors who've grown too comfortable operating in the shadows and away from defense scrutiny and overly solicitous intelligence community's preferences for clandestine filings. Man, that is a nice sentence right there. Very nice sentence. Another example of a casual argument made by comfortable prosecutors operating in the shadows and the gutters would be a nice addition away from the defense scrutiny. Love it. Now, the prosecution's position is also inconsistent with governing regulations, which require that portion marks and reflects the classification level that's appropriate. Now, unless the special counsel is acknowledging an error, which would serve as yet another reason to doubt their ability to act as reliable ex parte stewards, there is no basis for claiming that a paragraph portion marked as unclassified is in fact classified. Right? They didn't make a mistake, did they? So the court should reject Jack's attempt to hide unclassified arguments from Trump's lawyers. The office's continued reliance on vague and unsupported claims here and the need for, quote, secrecy only underscores the importance of actually allowing us to see it. Jack Smith says that this is a need-to-know thing. Okay. They say, look, this need-to-know requirement is something ridiculous and it should be rejected. Saying the need-to-know position of Jack Smith's office depends on the merits of the motion. They say, well, Smith argues that the defense does not have a need to know because that information is not discoverable or relevant or helpful to the defense. You see that? Don't you love it when prosecutors tell us what's going to be relevant or helpful to us? Yeah. Thus, the prosecution seeks to withhold classified submissions from Trump's lawyers by assuring the court that the office is correct. So the logic is circular, obviously, and it's very unpersuasive. So they explain that Jack Smith is not the sole arbiter of Trump's need to know. Remember, Molly says they don't even need to read the discovery. Like, we got it organized. We know where the highlights are. She had the little tabs that are on there that are like clear. And you're like, wow, these are expensive. How much do these cost? So this distribution controls on classified information, including evaluation of a need to know, was all originated under Trump's leadership. And so need to know is defined as the following. And saying Trump's lawyers clearly need to know. Cleared counsel assisting in the defense of a defendant, which is a constitutional right, is appropriate. He is entitled to access the information. Now, because these waivers may also be granted, there is no reasonable basis for withholding a waiver that Trump helped create the framework for. The original classification authorities must address these issues. Having apparently concluded that Trump have a need to know basis, the agency's conclusions regarding the need to know could only be based on legal guidance from Jack Smith. But this, again, is flawed. And so therefore, the court should reject Jack Smith's need to know basis. They're going to tell us that courts should be skeptical of ex parte proceedings. It's not good for us to have non-adversarial proceedings where one side presents evidence to the judge and the other side is thrown out. They give us several cases here where permission to file ex parte were not appropriate. They say nearly all cases that Jack Smith relies upon to stand for the uncontroversial position that courts have discretion. But courts reaching that conclusion have typically relied on a footnote from a committee report, and Jack Smith didn't address those issues. Instead, most other courts defer against this, saying there's no basis for sealing citations. Now, he's also trying to hide his citations, and they say there's no basis for any of that either, saying the public has an independent right of access. And while it's not absolute, it should weigh into the analysis. And so Jack Smith bears the burden of demonstrating why sealing this stuff is necessary, and he has not done that here. So, in conclusion, Trump's defense say, for the foregoing reasons, Trump respectfully submits that this court should order that Jack Smith provide Trump's lawyers with attorney's eyes only access to the docket, and that any other things that are redacted should be filed publicly as well. Signed by Trump defense team Todd Blanche and Christopher Keese there in Florida, submitting that to Judge Cannon. And so we'll see what Judge Cannon does with this. I am hopeful that she hears them. And again, The public in this case should be able to see as much as humanly possible. I'd like all this stuff to be televised for all I care. And for some reason, Jack Smith wants it all hidden. We know what the reason is. It's because they're cheaters, bullies. They don't want transparency. They want to do everything under the dark of night so that we can't see the truth. Now, Alina Habba is right. She says, Jack Smith has no case. He's running scared. She showed up to have a chat with Greg Kelly, and this is what it sounded like.
Examine witnesses who have quote-unquote
Sebastian
government
Gorka.
privileges. Alina, it sounds to me as if Jack Smith is running scared.
Yeah, this is called a due process violation. They do it in the form of a gag order. He should be scared. He doesn't want basically any defense being brought by the defense. It's what happened with the last trial I tried. It's what will happen with the next one I try. These judges will gag you. They will try and use his popularity and his voice as a way to work against us and the American people so that people cannot hear the truth. That whole list is the defense. That's saying you cannot put your own defense on.
Yeah.
That's like saying you can't have an expert on the Letitia James case or gagging his lawyers, which has happened to me. You can't. I was gagged in the courtroom. Imagine, Sebastian, in the courtroom, I could not put on a defense on the record for the appellate division. I couldn't say things that needed to be said. That is what our country has come to. And Jack Smith is running scared because he has no case.
Woo! We like to hear that, Alina. Nice analysis there. And of course, she's right. That is what they are doing. They don't want Trump to be able to speak. They don't want you to be able to vote for him. They don't want you to be able to even see what's happening in these trials. Of course, we're not going to let that happen. We're going to be here covering this and unveiling everything that they're trying to bury. So thank you for subscribing, my friends. Thank you for joining us and for inviting someone else that you know or love to come over and check our channel out so they can see what's really happening behind the scenes and stay up to speed with these efforts by the illegal counsel, Jack Smith. Don't forget to also check out robertgovea.com. We got our website up there. If you want to read these filings, all the PDFs are posted there. They're also assembled into a nice daily newsletter that will be delivered to your inbox, and you can sign up there at robertgovea.com. You can also check out the shop, get some new gear. It's a great way to support the show. We'd love to see pictures of you wearing your stuff, and we'll look forward to seeing you back here on the next one. All right, my friends, and that is segment number 2, but we're not done yet. We have now to turn our attention to Maine. Donald Trump demands the Secretary of State in Maine recuse herself for being a biased partisan operator. The woman's name is Sheena Bellows, seen here. We'll learn a little bit more about her. But the letter went over to Maine from Trump's attorneys, some new people in Maine who we're going to learn about. They sent the letter saying, look, your prior tweets, your past comments about Donald Trump mean you're biased. You don't have a balanced viewpoint on whether Trump remains on the ballot or not. And so you got to go. Then we're going to listen to this disgraced ex-FBI agent called Peter Strozk, along with Representative Dingell, who's going to explain her position on Trump. But this is what the letter looks like that Trump's team sent in to Maine. From Donald Trump's defense to the Secretary of State of Maine, her name is Sheena Bellows. They say, all right, Shenna, this is Trump's request to disqualify you. Get out of here. Trump's request to disqualify the Secretary of State, which is this woman right here. So they say, look, President Trump requests that the Secretary of Maine disqualify herself from this matter because she's already concluded that Donald Trump engaged in an insurrection. Now, a determination that she made well before any evidence or argument even showed up in front of her. And remember, in Maine, we're having a conversation about whether the Colorado opinion can be presented to her and be persuasive or binding authority without even doing anything else, right? The election laws are different in Maine. So the Secretary of State just has some discretion to make these decisions, who shows up on the ballot. And so she asked for an update that we covered here saying, what should I do now that Colorado has made their ruling? So Trump is filing this saying she can't make this ruling. Because the secretary has exhibited personal bias in this matter, she should disqualify herself from further proceedings. Trump's team says, specifically, the secretary here, Shenna, made 3 public statements showing that she already has prejudged this matter. The first statement came out on February 13th when Shenna issued a public statement on Twitter, which is now renamed X, thanks Elon, in which Shenna said this. Here's the link. The January 6th insurrection, she says, was an unlawful attempt to overthrow the results of a free and fair election. Yeah, right. Today, 57 senators, including King and Collins from Maine, you know, Susan Collins, found Trump guilty. That wasn't enough. Sorry, Shenna. That's short of impeachment, but nevertheless an indictment. No, it isn't. An indictment is a whole separate legal concept. An indictment is something that you get that Jack Smith did. But she says the insurrectionists failed and democracy prevailed. Okay, so these are the same lunatics who are then going to turn around and say Trump needs to be thrown off the ballot to save democracy. Gosh. All right. So that's Shenna. All right. So here's another one from this genius. The secretary followed up upon her own tweet. She said, not saying not disappointed. Well, yeah, because you guys lost. He should have been impeached. You mean convicted via impeachment. Okay. But history will not treat him or those who voted against impeachment kindly. Well, he's currently leading the polls, Shenna. So I don't know what you're saying about that, but that sounds like a prejudgment as well. Now, third, on January 6, 2022, she's having flashbacks, okay? Jen is like, waking up in cold sweats thinking about Liz Cheney again on the anniversary. 1 year after the event, oh God, probably got cards, probably had a day of somberness where they got together in their little Democrat cliques and said, we survived. The secretary further endorsed the view that the events on January 6 constituted an insurrection. She said this, that the democratic governance needed protection. All right, so these people are going to protect us from voting. Specifically, tweeted about a media report about her efforts to protect election officials. She retweeted WMTW TV, said Maine Secretary of State seeks to protect election officials, ballots, and voting machine integrity. And she said, okay, that sounds reasonable. Like, yeah, you're the Secretary of State. Like, we don't want ballot stuffers stuffing ballots. We don't want voting machines like what happened in Arizona not functioning because, you know, arguably they were rigged by techs who caused delays when you needed to go vote for Kerry Lake. So, yeah, we want that, but that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about rigging, okay? Protection means rigging. That's just, intersperse that. But she retweeted this. This is her ex. Says, 1 year after the violent insurrection, it's important to do all we can to safeguard our elections. You know what that means, don't you? Censoring people who might challenge them, disenfranchising people from voting by securing the election buildings, I guess, or whatever. You know, we saw all of it. Changing ballot collection requirements, waiving signature requirements, safeguarding or rigging it. But using similar language, they say the challengers have claimed that the events of January 6th, now the challengers here, like all of this is going back up to this woman. Like this woman who said these things is now going to be able to protect us from voting for Trump. Isn't that nice? Using similar language, this constituted, she said, a violent insurrection. She said Trump somehow poses a danger and Maine has to be protected. And so they say, look, obviously you're a partisan hack. You've already passed judgment on this challenge. And so we don't need to hear from you. Boost yourself off the case. Furthermore, Trump's team says by calling impeachment proceedings and Senate vote, calling it an indictment, quotes, which is not even accurate, the secretary has exhibited a personal bias against him. She has bluntly stated that Trump should have been impeached, later called him an insurrectionist who failed. And these statements literally address the very claims that are at issue in her desk right now. She's already agreed with their factual claims. So they say, look, Trump deserves a fair and impartial hearing. Both the Maine legislature and the Maine courts demand that state administrative proceedings be conducted fairly and with integrity. Anybody who's making decisions should do so without being a partisan hack. And the statute in Maine authorizes the secretary to appoint an impartial officer to adjudicate the challenge. And so you should do that. Whenever a hearing person like this woman, Shenna, is disqualified, or if it becomes impractical, substitute someone else in there. And so it goes without saying that the challenger's efforts to prohibit Maine Republicans from voting for Trump is a highly charged matter, serious constitutional and public policy consequences. And so the Secretary Shenna, her expression of support that Trump was an insurrectionist is at least probative evidence of prejudgment and bias. And so at minimum, that should be avoided. But so due to the expedited nature of this proceeding and the limited time to investigate, they say, look, undersigned counsel only learned of this information at the close of business in mid-December. And this request has been promptly filed following investigation and verification of the accuracy of her X's. Now, at this point in the proceedings, the secretary may designate an impartial hearing officer now and will stop considering this matter. This is a far better course of action than rendering judgment after it becomes evidence you've already predetermined this. And so for these reasons, President Trump asks that Shenna hereby disqualify herself from rendering a judgment in this matter, appoint an unbiased and impartial hearing officer, and transfer the matter to that person accordingly. Respectfully submitted to you, Shenna, by your friend Benjamin Hartwell, who lives over in Portland, Maine, and Scott Gessler, who resides over in Greenwood Village, Colorado. We've also got Gary Lakowski. Shout out to Gary in Alexandria, Scott in Colorado, and Hartwell in Portland, Maine, all doing good work here, calling out this corrupt partisan hackery from this Secretary of State. These are the people who are in charge. They are governing the elections. This is their entire life. They're operated and elected, right, and reappointed based on their political actions, and they are not in alignment with allowing you to vote for Trump. So people like Peter Strozk, who said, we're going to stop Trump when he was at the FBI, showed up on MSNBC to talk about Trump, saying, they can't unwrite the 14th Amendment. And so Trump should be disqualified. Here is what this guy says. And this guy is such a weenie that he banned me on X because he's a weenie. Can't even deal with the arguments. Not only was the FBI and Elvis Chan very likely reporting our post, we got multiple strikes back during COVID, back after January 6th, but he's also blocking us on Twitter because they're spineless weenies who can't deal with the truth. But then he shows up on MSNBC and says this.
Peter, it strikes me we've talked about Michigan. That's the big news we came in on. We've just talked about Maine. But I go back to the point that Joyce made earlier about the fact that there's going to have to be a unified understanding. This is not going to work if there is a patchwork of state solutions. She is thinking of that, of course, legally. That is the role we ask her to play. For you, from a security perspective, right, from a sense of people being able to get on board and say, these are the rules, whether or not you like them. This is how we are proceeding as a nation. Both your biggest concerns and sort of the best path forward here if we are able to get to a unified understanding.
Well, my biggest concern is that we have the presumptive Republican nominee for president who has and continues to engage in calls for violence from his supporters. And look, there's an interesting data point.
What? Trump is asking for calls of violence from his supporters?
Well, my biggest concern is that we have the presumptive Republican nominee for president who has and continues to engage in calls for violence from his supporters.
That's insane. Trump is calling for violence from his supporters. This is the FBI, man. And of course, they live there, right? They go there and then they go over to X or Twitter before, and then they go over to FBI, Facebook, and they go over to, Instagram and all the things. And then they go up on MSNBC. It's just one big revolving door. They get little, cushy jobs like this to continue the narrative of the agency.
And look, there's an interesting data point here. Just shortly after the Michigan Supreme Court indicated they weren't going to take this up, Donald Trump took to Truth Social and lauded their decision, talked about how they were absolutely right. It would be very interesting. You know, Frank pointed out how the FBI in Colorado out of the Denver office is actively working the threats to the Colorado justices.
There aren't any, okay? We heard CNN report that the other day when they said it was all made up.
Let's take a look at the data coming out of Michigan. Are there any threats right now to those Michigan Supreme Court justices who decided not to hear the case? Because the fact of the matter is, this isn't an environment where everybody is prone to violence. The fact of the matter...
No, who is? Who is? The Antifa people? The people blocking the freeways all over the place right now who vote left?
This is an environment where adherents and supporters of the former president are engaging in threats of violence, and there's a comparative absence of any sort of like behavior on the side. You don't see supporters of...
They're blocking airports. They're blocking freeways all over the country.
Joe Biden going out and threatening Michigan Supreme Court justices. So my worry is that Donald Trump is not constraining any of his behavior. His words result in violent action. It isn't stopping. He is well aware of what's going on. And I think whatever we see coming out of the Supreme Court, they can't unwrite the 14th Amendment. There is going to have to be some provision that if somebody engages in insurrection, that does potentially disqualify them from the presidency in some way, in some manner of determining that. Trump is not going to like that. And so the question is, as we move down into 2024, we've got a slow boil right now, but that pot is just going to get hotter and hotter and hotter on the oven.
Yeah, because you guys keep trying to remove people's right to vote in America away from them. It's the most anti-democratic, tyrannical thing that you could imagine. You had a right to vote. Now you don't because of them. So you want to talk about tyranny? You want to talk about pushing people to act? Steal away their God-given right to vote in this country. And yeah, you're going to have some problems with that. Now, take a look at this backdrop from this weird dude. So first of all, I don't know who this picture, I don't know if that's him and Lisa Page back there or what's happening back there. But remember, that was his ex-FBI lover, Lisa Page. I don't know if she's made any photos or what happened, but take a look at this book that this guy wrote. The title of his book is called Compromised, okay? Compromised, Peter Strozk, which is just like the worst cover that I've ever seen, because it's saying Peter Strozk is compromised, which is actually the most accurate book title that we've ever seen, right? I do not think this guy has the interest of American democracy at heart at all. I think he's an apparatchik of the FBI, and he's out there doing their bidding. We know the agency is still doing the work inside the agency. He is now just left. These people are reprehensible. Anyways, and he's a coward too. So this gal is Representative Dingell, aka Representative Debbie Dingleberry. She responds to Trump's lasted post attacking her because she criticized him. And we knew this was coming, okay? All this rotten hell stuff they're going to be very upset about. Here's Dingleberry.
Lashed out at you after you had told CNN that you thought the message that he had posted on Christmas Day, a lengthy one, there are multiple, but in short, he told his political rivals to rot in hell. And you called that a pathetic message from a former president. And in this latest post, he's going back to what is a very familiar line of attack, going after the death of your husband, his funeral honors. He's calling you a loser in all caps in this post. I just want to give you
What a nice way to invite a guest onto the show. Hey, you're just a total loser and an idiot, and your husband's dead, and you're somebody who should rot in hell. Anything to say? What an interview.
Chance to respond to that if you wish.
What do you want to say?
I'm going to say we got to treat each other with dignity and respect. Civility matters. Words have consequences.
Okay, Debbie Dingell, your side is calling Trump Adolf Hitler, saying Representative Strozk that he's calling for violence, which I've never heard ever. Not once. Not even anything close to that. Okay, Fight Like Hell is not even close to that. And you guys are just going through this. It's a little bit of a drama class happening right here with these two playing with each other about how offended they are.
We're in a holiday right now that so many people have had a tough, hard year. We need some calm, some love, some hope, not more negative words with division. And I think each and every one of us has a responsibility to stand up and ask everybody to treat each other with that respect and dignity. And I'm going to, as you say, he goes back to my late husband, who was a giant, a great man
I'm
who
sure. Rest
touched
in
many
peace. I don't know.
things. And he earned everything he got at his funeral when he was buried. It was Nancy Pelosi and actually Mitch McConnell and others that helped arrange some of the things. But I'm going to tell you two things. I remember I did not call Donald Trump. He called me. And I remember his kind words that day.
Oh, that's
I
nice.
was grateful that he lowered the flags. And I remember that
That's
act
nice.
of kindness. And I choose to remember it as an act of kindness and a touching thing at a very hard time. And maybe all of us could remember that just having empathy and compassion and a little kindness will make everybody's day a little better.
Okay, let's see what Caitlin says.
And even-
she doesn't like that. That's like a nice thing. Trump gave me a nice phone call. He was nice about it.
You know, despite his attack, do you still stand by, I assume, your initial assessment that that message about his political rivals rotting in hell was pathetic?
Why would you use that kind of language on Christmas Day?
Because you're demons.
This is a man that was a leader of this country and wants to be a leader again. Let's instill hope, civility, love, support, kindness, compassion, a few other words than rot in hell on Christmas Day.
Well, maybe you shouldn't be acting so demonic and monstrously, and maybe you'd have a better shot at getting into heaven. And Trump wouldn't have to say that you're going to probably rot in hell at some point in time. So we'll see where they go, where they end up. Of course, that's between them and their maker. We hope they live long, fruitful lives here. But they should not act so corruptly, and maybe Trump wouldn't have such choice words for them. But did you hear what that exchange was? I mean, it's like, did they even say anything? They're saying we need civility as they're locking people up in gulags, as FBI agents are raiding homes, as they prosecute their political opponents all across America. They want civility. No. How about no? See you in hell. All right. So this is Donald Trump, of course, Peter Strozk, Dingell, and others. Trump demanding a recusal from the Secretary of State in Maine. And we're going to continue to cover this, my friends. And so we'll be here. Thank you for subscribing. Don't forget to check out our website, robertgovea.com. We got a great shop there. Shirts, hats, the Watcher hat with the Watcher logo that I sport every single day, and I'd love it if you did too. Don't forget to check it out. Thanks for signing up for our newsletter over there, robertgovea.com. We'll be looking forward to seeing you and your friends right back here on the next one. All right, my friends. Now, that is it for us on the day. We're going to see what you have to say about it. We covered Trump demanding the Maine Secretary recuse herself, Trump demanding access to the hidden secret CIPA filings, and Trump is going back on the ballot in Colorado for the foreseeable future unless something else happens. But now, my friends, let's hear from you and see what you have to say about this over from our friends at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, our friends on Rumble. The tubes are working today. Our friends on Locals and elsewhere. We're going to say hi to X, and we're going to go over to our members only after party after the show. And guess who's back in town, my friends? Vienticus Prime is back in the house. We hope you had a beautiful, beautiful time off and an amazing holiday. It's good to see you. And welcome Marilyn S. becoming a supporter. Welcome aboard, Marilyn S. We'll see you on our members only morning stream tomorrow and on our Saturday show as well. Tony Hay Munkets is bringing in some new members. Good to see you, Tony. Look at Vienticus. He had a combo breaker. Sergeant Gold Star Mom is here. Oh, SD Gold Star Mom. What's up, SD Gold Star Mom? Hey, and SD, I saw your message out here, and I before the show started, I saw you say something very nice, and I remember reading your name. Thank you for saying that. Dog Backwards is here. Kevin H is here. CCC Combo Breaker with Bacon from Vienticus. No Jabskis in the house. Oh my goodness. Pope Rackets touched me. Is a member again. We have a lot of those experiences here. A lot of touching. All right, welcome aboard. We'll see what we can do to repair the damage. Nice to have you. Thank you, Tony Hay, for bringing everyone in, and we're grateful for you. Pinecone is bringing in 5 new members as well. What's up, Pinecone? Thank you, Pinecone. Pinecone 13 in the house. Bringing in Brandon R., Michael K., Spitfires here, Chuck H., and Zancy Pelosi, all courtesy of Pinecone. You're the man. Thanks for bringing those membos in. And hey, any new members on YouTube, don't forget to grab the Telegram link. So on the YouTube homepage channel, navigate over to the community tab, scroll down, you'll see the Telegram link. That's where we'll see you after the show. We've got Larry is in the house. What's up, Larry? Says POTUS is unique in the Constitution in that he is literally a one-man branch of government. Right. The legislature is 535 people. All federal judges are judiciary. Trump was the executive branch. Yeah, I like how you put that, right? It's one man. I say that it is the root power. It is the root user. You know, you can't, it's like everything starts from that position. So if you subordinate it, then it's not actually the presidency, right? And you can create that safety valve, right? If you believe in the person, you can crack the tyrannical system. Like if all the legislature goes corrupt and all the judiciary goes corrupt, you can usurp them by overvoting, outvote them and install the president. It makes total logical sense. I don't know why it's so complicated for those on the left. You get it, Larry. Larry, thanks for the lovely support, my man. Good to see you here today. We got Lamey is here. What's up, Lamey? Says even Federalist Papers number 69 suggests that the president is like the British monarch, above everything. Right. You're right about that. And it's a little scary, like to think about it that way, right? It's a little scary to think, oh my gosh, the president is that person. But that's why we have two other co-equal branches of government. It's why we have a legislature. It's why we have a judiciary. And it's why we have articulated, enumerated powers in our Constitution. It's to rein in that. And the Bill of Rights, right? Back during the Federalist Papers, there was the anti-federalists were screaming about this. We don't like this. We want a Bill of Rights because the British monarch was a psychopath who quartered soldiers in our homes. And we don't want to deal with that. So that's why it works. But, you can't deny, you can't just say the president is subordinate to NARA because Congress passed some laws. Like, give me a break on that. That's not what our country is. And I like, a strong presidency, somebody who can stand up for America and deliver action. That's the point of having the presidency. All right, Tony Hayes here. Good comment, Lamey. Tony Hay, another one, bringing in more membos, including little old me's coming in. We got Justin Y. Mima is here. What's up, Mima? Anthony's here, and the Sentinel is coming in, courtesy of Tony Hay Munkett. It's good to see you, Tony Hay. We got this one from Knox says, I keep wondering when some court is just going to say what all of us know. Word usage can be colorful, hyperbolic, illustrative, etc. When my client urges me to, quote, really fight for them, they do not mean I should go punch the bailiff. That's a great point. Yeah. Like, are you going to fight for me? Yeah, I'm going to get out my machete and my swords and I'm going to build my gallows on the halls of the Capitol. That's what I mean. Will you fight for me, Rob? Yeah. As soon as I erect my gallows at the Capitol building. Just a joke, feds, all right? Right, it's ridiculous. The word fight is used all the time, and I think the RNC X account has like 20 minutes of the Democrats saying, fight, fight, fight. They all say it. Only Trump gets indicted for it. What's up, Knox says, happy last Thursday of 2023, everyone. All right, should we just enjoy it for a minute? All right, soak it up. Soak up your Thursday. Gonna be the last one. Tomorrow's our last Friday. We'll hope to see you here. Good to see you, Knox. Michael Woodward is here, says the left can't see far enough in the future to have something in their back pocket. They are driven by their stop Trump at all costs. You don't think so, Michael? I hope you're right, man. I honestly do think that they put all their, they put a lot of eggs in the indictment baskets. That's why there were 4 of them. Okay, let's just try 4 times. And they're like getting close to failing on all 4 of them. So I'm sure they have contingency plans. I don't know legally that it's going to be anything that they can do now with the short time frame. But I'm concerned. I have this repeat vision of that Indiana Jones scene where they take that golden head off and he puts the sandbag on. And I feel like they're going to try to, that's literally Trump. Like they're going to take the golden head off and put Nikki Haley's bag of incompetence on it. So it's like, what's happening here? I get a little nervous about it, but we'll have to see. Good to see you, Michael. Thank you for that. Michael also says, I believe that was evident with their jump to the Supreme Court. Right. Like, yes, and I agree, Michael. They're scrambling, right? Jack Smith freaked out. He asked Chutkan to accelerate it, filed in the Court of Appeals, asked them to accelerate it, then filed it up at the SCOTUS and asked them to accelerate it, right? He is freaked out. Because I think, they had 4 shots on goal. And if they're going to miss all of those, it's like, are you serious? You guys are 0 for 4? Pathetic. Rivka, the Jade Gamer, is over on Rumble. What's up, Rivka? Says, okay, Section 14.3, the 14th Amendment, Section 3, was self-executing. If it was, wouldn't the congressman who supported the Amnesty Act have been booted from Congress before it could vote? Because supporting it was aid and comfort from the insurrectionists. Well, yeah, and Rivka, actually, if you go back and read the history of this, like, there was amnesty granted for a lot of those same leaders. Like, after the Civil War was over, they tried to repair a lot of this. And like, people who were with the Confederacy were, kind of brought back in, like, into governing positions. And there was some amnesty granted, and it was all, the country was being put back together, like much more so now than now. They're trying to define a whole new class of insurrectionists rather than reintegrate the people who were fighting for their interpretation of the country, back into the fold. And so I think there's a lot of truth to that. There's also arguments, and Newt Gingrich also makes this argument, that there is a temporal limitation on the 14th Amendment, that essentially it applies to the Civil War, right? And anybody who was involved in that, not everything else indefinitely, including 4-hour riots, which I think is a fun argument. Indoctrination is here. Says, you're a Watching the Watchers viewer when you see areola trending and can't understand why it was in sports. Areola. Wow, that's an interesting one. There's a lot of stuff we talk about here. We covered the Derek Chauvin case. Jena, is that Jenna Ellis by chance? And Areola Angeron. That's a nice, and we talk about Javier Milei in Argentina. That's a nice trending list you have there. Maybe I don't know why it's... Oh, maybe Judge Angeron was playing pickleball at his local gym. That's why it's in the sports section. His areolas are out. Got it. That's from Indoctrination. We've got Tony Hay Munkett says, okay, 5 new membos coming in from Tony Hay. Man, you're the man. Several of these today. Bringing in Castro Valley Lip. Andrew D's in the house. Sup Forrest G's here. Indie Gal is in the house, and that account is also joining as a membo. Good to see you, Tony Hay Munkets. Thanks for bringing the membos in. We got Glenn Croy is bringing in some membos. Guess who's here? James X. One Voice is coming in. Saintly Beginnings. Miss Selly is in the house, and Lexi is coming in, all courtesy of Glenn Croy. Glenn, thanks for bringing in the new membos. New membos, don't forget, we'll see you on the members only stream tomorrow and on Saturday. Become a member if you want to join us for those. Mexican Marauders here says, if they are using the quote incomplete report as evidence, incomplete report, then wouldn't that be easily appealed? It's like bringing in half of a prosecutor's evidence. It sounds like a bad crime show. You're absolutely right about that, Mexican Marauder. There is a lot of truth to that. I think that's one of the main criticisms about what happened in Colorado. Basically, the Colorado trial, they just took the January 6th report and just admitted it as an exhibit and said, this is now evidence. And you said, well, that wasn't a real proceeding. There was no cross-examination. There was no adversarial party there. And it was all out-of-court statements that are being made to prove that this case here, it's all hearsay. Like, it's all insane. It's not actual due process. It's fake due process. And we're hopeful the Supreme Court actually calls it out. We'll see if that happens. Patrick Parker's here, bringing in membos. What's up, Patrick? Thanks for bringing in 5 new membos, including Sarah L., Robert G., Unknown Artist is here, Silent Rage, and Cameron S. is coming in. Thanks to Patrick Parker bringing in new membos. Thank you, Patrick. Hopefully you're having a beautiful day, my friend. And Tony Hayes bringing in 5 more. 5 more from Tony. Thank you, Tony. We got Patrick R. Rita's here. Grick is here. Felix is in the house, along with Amanda S., all as our newest YouTube membos. We got Vientikis has given us a vacation update. He says vacay was only 3 out of 5. Not enough bacon. Oh, man. Well, I would imagine it's hard to keep up with the quantity of bacon. I mean, you're kind of a machine. I don't know. Is there any vacation location that is a 5 out of 5 out of bacon because of bacon production? I mean, the first thing I'm thinking about is like a pig farm, you know, or a bacon factory, whatever that looks like. So maybe that's on your bucket list. Maybe you've already covered that, but we're glad you're back. Glad it was at least a 3 out of 5. Welcome back, V. Saying from B-Man, President Trump does not have to be nice. Do people want to put him in jail for life? Yes. So first statement is true. He does not have to be nice. In fact, I don't want a bunch of nice politicians telling us nice garbage, actually. And do people want to put him in jail for life? Absolutely. I think a lot of people do. And they're working hard to do that right now. But we're not going to let that happen. We've got this one from Nobody You is our newest shout out supporter. Welcome aboard, Nobody You. And, you know, if you want to get those gifting membos, my understanding is you got to change a setting on your YouTube app. So look at the settings, turn on a setting that says accept membos, and then maybe you'll get one on the next show. Sam in Texas has been a member for 3 months, says worth every penny as a member. We'll be here a while. Hey, thanks for saying that, Sam. We try to do good work for our members. You know, I know some other entities don't do that, but we really try to do that. We do member streams in the morning. We do Saturday shows. And we're turning up the volume here. It says, my day isn't the same at work without getting to the guts of the filings. Trump 2024. Sam in Texas, it's good to see you, man. Thanks for being a member for 3 months. And, you know, the first month's the hardest, my friends. But once you make it past that first month, things are pretty smooth sailing from there. You know, we really get to know each other. So I'm glad that you joined us, Sam. It's really great to have you. And I'm with you, man. I can't wait to read these things. So I'm glad that we're not alone. Thanks for being here, Sam. Thanks for being a member. Thanks for supporting us. And we're 1/3 of the way to a baby. All right, let's see what's going on the X platform before we wrap it up and go over to our members only after party on Locals and on Telegram. Who is joining us in the house? 16 viewers, 15 viewers. All right, it's a little bit lower than it has been the rest of the week, but you know, that's okay. Maybe people are out there preparing for 2024. So Mary Paquette says, how do I enter on, so by the way, don't forget to get your Vanish. Okay, holster, vanish.com, vnsh.com/Robert Govea will take you there. And the link is in the YouTube description. So you can definitely click that link. But if you purchase before December 31st, then you'll get some good love from Vanish. And so check them out. We got TJ King is here. George is here saying, if the 14th Amendment requires activation as a sword, it can be deactivated or sheathed by Congress by the 1872 Amnesty Act. See that? Others have been charged. All failed. Socialist Rep. Victor Berger was hit with espionage and he won at SCOTUS. What a nice comment from TJ King. Hey, Rita, the best show ever. Thank you for that one. JB says, someone has a thing for, Rob really has a thing for Alina. And I told my girl, wow, Rob really has a thing for Alina. She said, yes, it's a thing called male genitals. She tells it with the bark on. Tim Reynolds says, they said it was fine to remove Trump because a court did it, yet they stayed silent as long as possible at the Secretary of State, Maine, trying to remove him. Funny stuff. Okay, George is here, says the 14th Amendment was designed to make sure slavery stayed stamped out. Our founders are rolling over in their grave. And Darkside says, so now New York is worried about knowing who these illegal immigrants are since Texas is busing them to their city. That's why I refer to them as hypocrites. Red marker of truth from Howler Dude. Danny says, Rob, how old are you? I'm 38. We got Fred is sharing this one. That's the 1878 book. Ooh, thanks for the link. What I would want is the original. You know, I want the original 1878 book. That's what I was saying would be awesome. And Fred says, you know, it's killing Jack Smith that Judge Cannon is presiding over the classified documents case. They're very unhappy about that. Hey, my roommate's in love with you. Well, shout out to your roommate, Danny. Said if I had a time machine, I'd go back in time to George Washington and, you know, take care of business. I said I'd pay your carpet cleaning bill after the nipple pics. I don't know. I don't remember saying that. A $3.7 million carpet cleaning bill? What the heck happened over there, Danny? All right, so my friends, that is us on X at Rob Govea ESQ. Thanks for following us over there. Thanks for retweeting stuff. Thanks for following your friends over there, other commenters, and boosting each other out there while we are in the wild on the X together. But my friends, that is going to be it for us on the day. We had First Amendment shouting out Gold Star Mom. Love shouting out our Gold Star moms. And First Amendment, thank you for the nice tip. We're going to see you in a minute at the after party. My friends, you can come and join us watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We do streams in the morning. We do streams on Saturday. And we're working on some cool stuff, so come check it out. Want to thank the mods who mod down the fort for us and keep things nice and orderly. We got Vientikis Prime and our friend Zach Nichols clipping away for us today. Vientikis, welcome back. K-Bean cleaning up for us in the mornings. We got Just Cause here playing hooky. Ronnie Cole, our friend Zulu, Beyond Geo, Zach Nichols in the house, John Allen helping out, Janek and Dog Digger, all in the house, modding down the fort for us. We shout out our meme smiths, Jigam Gigam, Nathan N810, and our friend Sleepy Dog Lee on the X platform. But my friends, that is it for us on the day. We are going to leave it there. We'll be back tomorrow. There's going to be a lot more to get into, the last Friday of the year. And so I hope to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.